We can get started. This is our 12th Rental Roundtable episode. So, John, thank you for joining. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you very much for having me, Kyle.
For those listening live, feel free to chat in questions at any time. I'll ask those as we go through. This will be an informal conversation. John, first question. You're in Chicago area. I imagine it's 80 and sunny today in December. What's the weather like there?
Always. It was about 20 and sunny this morning when I left the house. It's actually a little bit more mild this week than we're used to. So I think the highs will be around 40 today, and we're actually going to hit 50 by Friday. So it won't last. We know that, but we'll take any break we can get.
Yeah, well, in Atlanta, Georgia, I don't think 20 is that's the absolute coldest that we'll get here. I think last year it got down to 15 and everyone's pipes were bursting because people didn't know what to do. Jealous of the cold weather. So John, we got a lot to talk about today. First off, you're obviously the president of RentalMax. You're very involved with the ARA, but for people who don't know you, can you share a little bit about your background and how you first got into the rental industry to begin with?
Sure, absolutely. So I started in the rental industry in 2018. I actually moved back from Indianapolis to Chicago. I have young family, and my wife and I made a family decision to move back to the Chicagoland area to be closer to her family. And so, in the process of doing that, looking at career options, I was introduced to RentalMax. I was actually familiar with RentalMax, but through a mutual connection, introduced to the company and the opportunity to succeed RentalMax founder and former president Terry Hagee. RentalMax was looking for a successor, looking for someone to come in and really take a great company and position it for growth. And so I came from outside the industry, so rental and equipment rental was very new to me, at that time. But I did a lot of research, did a lot of homework, and when I came in and met with the team, I really felt like all the pieces were in place to be successful, in the industry and specifically with RentalMax, which at the time had 8 locations, all in suburban Chicagoland and Illinois. We have been able to grow. We now have 10 store locations, including one in Northwest Indiana, one in Madison, Wisconsin. We also just opened a dispatch center, which is really kind of our 11th location this year. And so, I felt like we had a great foundation back in 2018, a great culture that had been built since the company was started in 1997. And a lot of the right people and pieces to continue to grow. And so it's been a great journey. I'm looking forward to a long journey ahead, and a lot of exciting times for RentalMax and for the rental industry. As we wrap up 2023 and look toward 2024. I've also had the opportunity over the last 3 years to get involved with ARA and serve on the ARA board of directors. I've been able to serve on various committees, including government affairs, including a technology committee, and I am a co-chair for the shared interest group for equipment rental, and that whole experience has been phenomenal for me to continue to grow and continue to do what we can to contribute back to the industry and serve ARA and the ARA membership.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the topics later, we'll talk about the future of the industry and how that's really people and some of the initiatives ARA is working on. We'll get to that later on. For me, it's refreshing to talk to people who have not been in the rental industry for 50 years. Some of the people who've come on here, it's like, I've been in the industry 30 years, 50 years, 55 years. My grandfather started the rental business, and I've been here 3 years, not from the industry, knew nothing when we got into this. How did you get up to speed quickly? I guess 5-6 years ago, what was your first year like, and how you learned about the industry? How did you get up to speed so quickly?
So I feel very fortunate that I had the opportunity to learn from someone like Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Hagee started the company with other partners back in 1997. When I came in, we went through a transition over about 3 months where we were both, really working closely together in the office. And more than anything, that gave me the opportunity to spend a lot of time in all of our stores. So I spent a week at each of the 8 stores, working right alongside our team in all aspects of the business, from counter service to yard service to delivery drivers to maintenance, really to get a firsthand look and understanding of how the stores were operating, what what the interaction was with our customers, what was going well, what were we struggling with, where were the opportunities, really kind of that SWOT type analysis for the business. And and fortunately, RentalMax has had a lot of great people, a lot of long-time team members that some of who have been here since the beginning or since RentalMax acquired their family business back in the late 90s or early 2000s. So I really focused on coming in and building relationships, building a level of trust and respect with the people that were here, especially the people that were in leadership or management positions at RentalMax. And and I didn't pretend to be anything I wasn't. I didn't come in and try to pretend like I was the expert in the equipment rental industry, because the truth was that the people here who had been running the business for in a lot of cases 20 plus years knew a lot more about the ins and outs of the operations of the business. My role was to come in and understand how everything fit together, and then what the opportunities were, and to develop a vision for the future for the company that at the end of the day, and sitting here now almost 6 years later, has allowed for people to grow within the company, and allowed for us to build on on what we had back in 2018.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My dad's always told me the first 100 days in a job, your only thing that matters is building trust. And like the way you were able to do that was getting in the field, with the whole team. So like if you're gonna be a great basketball player, you can watch videos, read books, but at the end of the day, you got to get out there and play basketball. That's how you really learn, right?
Exactly.
I've watched a lot of basketball and I haven't gotten any better watching it. So in terms of like you mentioned vision for the future, like what is the vision for RentalMax where you guys stand today? As much as you want to share.
Sure. So we back in September of 2018, we started implementing EOS, which, for those who may not be familiar with EOS, it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's based on a book written by Gino Wickman that's called Traction. And so RentalMax is part of peer executive groups, and so early on, I had the opportunity to go to a peer group meeting, along with Terry, and I heard from some of our peer company members about what they were doing with EOS in their businesses, and I feel like at that time it was still fairly new to the rental industry, EOS, and the idea of establishing a vision for the company and following the EOS process, which is really about strengthening key components, within a business. And it can be any business, but I think it fits very well with where RentalMax was at the time and where we are now, as well as for a lot of independent rental companies, in terms of the size of the companies, how many people are working in the businesses, how much revenue we're generating. And so we established a vision for the company back in 2018. And that vision was for growth. That vision was to, look at where we were in 2018. We had 8 stores. We had about $20 million in equipment fleet, based on what we see at that time. And we all, the leadership team that we established, which included our general manager, who has been here since the beginning, included our controller at the time, who's now our CFO, who had been with the company at that point for about 2 years, and then a member of our board of directors. And so we had a small leadership team, that established this vision for the company, and that started with our core values. And so, I felt like at that time, especially being new to the company, I didn't want to come in and just invent these core values that were aspirational and, and maybe didn't really reflect truly who the company was. And so we actually did incorporate a number of people from the company into this vision building process, especially establishing the core values without them knowing what we were doing. I mean, everything that our leadership team was working on at that time was in the background. And so we wanted to make sure that we had that vision, really, well set before we announced it to the company, and we shared all of the details. And I feel like we were able to get to that point. It's really within about 60 days, that you work to get to the point from, building the vision to having it ready to give what's called a vision speech to the company. And so I did that in December of 2018. There is what's called a 10-year target or a core target, that is really meant to, I think it's meant to set a high bar, almost something that when you think about it today is, you're like, how are we ever going to get to that point? But then you drill it back, to a 3-year picture for the company and a 1-year plan. And so, everything that we've done over the last 5 years has been part of that vision. The core values have remained the same. The core values are, a foundation for the business, and we look to bring in people that share our core values. The people that have done the best, with RentalMax over the years are people who have bought into, the vision for the company and, share those core values and live by those core values, because we want to give a lot of autonomy to our team members to make decisions. And so they've been able to do that as part of, if you're making a decision based on the core values, then, we're not going to bat 1,000. We're not going to be perfect, but we're going to be able to continue to move forward and not feel like every answer has to come from the top. And so we built a very transparent culture. We do share our vision internally, with the ideas that you have a vision that's shared by all. We've made 2 acquisitions, that are part of that vision. Really our core target is to continue to grow our fleet, and in doing so, maintain a certain level of utilization on that fleet. And, and everything that we're doing, whether that's going out and, making acquisitions and adding stores, or, launching a dispatch center, are all to really support that greater target. And there are, a number of details along the way that we have, and issues that we have to solve. One part of EOS is, around a focus on solving issues, at all levels of the company. That really the only way that you're going to progress is to solve those issues. And, ideally, you're not solving symptoms. You're solving the root issue, that is causing, whatever that particular issue may be. So our vision, I talked a lot kind of looking back, in terms of where we are now, looking to go. We're still focused on growth. I feel like we've learned a lot in 5 years. I think, for us to continue to grow geographically makes sense. I think we have a really strong network in Chicagoland, and I'm grouping Northwest Indiana into that, region, if you will. And then, Madison, Wisconsin is a new market for us. We see a lot of opportunity, to continue to grow in Wisconsin, take the RentalMax model and continue to grow geographically. We're very focused on our key rental categories, and we need to continue to expand our fleet to be able to grow as well. Because we have a range for utilization that we think is a sweet spot for us, and when we're trying to balance that. And for me, it's continuing to create opportunities for our people to grow as well. As we've grown, I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, is that created opportunities for people to grow into new positions. We have an expanded business development team. I think that's played a key role in our growth. We've been able to promote long-time store managers into area manager positions. We've been able to promote a long-time store manager into a training manager position. And so, it's really just trying to create opportunities that will continue to support the growth that we're experiencing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Like the whole context of how you sort of came into the company, you've understood the values, set the vision. The EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, we practice that at Quipley also. The 10-year goal for us, it's we call it the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. That's so embarrassing to put out that but a lot can happen in 10 years, right? I think the whole idea that people overestimate what can happen in 1 year, underestimate 10 years, and it should be sort of daunting. And we had on Jeff Luke Nagaris from Northside Tool Rental in October. He talked about in detail the whole EOS process. And I found a lot of leading rental groups use that framework for how they run their business. I do want to get to the 2024 outlook. I actually saw you wrote an article December 1st, the ARA, called Gaining Perspective, Steady Growth, and Looking Forward. Read that. I've got some questions based on that. But before that, we get to that, I want to go back to something you related to employees, because we have a question from the audience. And question is, how have these strategies helped with employee retention? You mentioned creating opportunities for people. And the question is, I find it tough to keep mechanics when they're in such high demand and a competitor will just offer them more money when they have an immediate need. So how have the strategies you've instilled in your company helped with employee retention in a world where there's not enough really good people?
First of all, that's a great question. We have a lot of the same issues, I think, that all rental businesses have from the standpoint of a tight labor market, a very competitive labor market. And what I would say from a retention standpoint is we really focus on building relationships with our people. We focus on having a strong culture. We focus on, I would say, giving our team members the autonomy to operate within the system and the processes that we've established. And we have lost people who have taken jobs that pay more, but we've also been able to keep people who have had offers from other companies that are paying more because of the culture that has been established. And we've had people tell us that this applies to mechanics as well as other positions as well. But I think mechanics are certainly in extremely high demand. We've had people say, we want to stay here, and so I think the idea that number one, I mean, you're going to, someone gets a higher dollar per hour offer. Sometimes sometimes you just can't keep those people because it's all about, being able to earn more. But I think there's a lot of staying power in, hey, I'm in a place where I feel valued. I'm in a growing company. As the company has grown, I've been able to grow. I mean, we have increased our compensation packages, whether that be hourly rates or salary or benefits. We've taken steps as we've grown to help people grow with us. And so it's not a cure-all, but I do think that that's one way that we've been able to retain people, and it's a big focus. I mean, as much as recruitment is a focus, I think retention is even more important right now, and that that's where we're putting a lot of our resources toward is retaining, especially the A players. I mean, I think you have to. So obviously, you want to build a team that where ideally everybody's an A player, um, but we will focus on who those key people are for sure.
Yeah, retention is huge. I mean, if it's like for software companies, it's something like 9 times cheaper to retain a customer than to go acquire a new one. Like it's just, with employees, it's the same way. And I think about, I don't know if you're a sports fan, but the Shohei Ohtani with the $700 million contract, like, yeah, you could be great, but there's also a cap, right? The Angels weren't going to pay $700 million. You're even with your A players, there's a limit to how much you'd be willing to play. And this is probably the fourth topic, but I just want to get into now is something you had mentioned to me previously was how the future of the industry is people and how important people are to the equipment rental industry. We've talked about retention and building the culture of autonomy and relationships, keeping people there. But can you talk to me about some of the things the ARA is doing in terms of, resources the ARA is creating in terms of drawing people into the industry that, different rental groups could take advantage of?
Absolutely. So I think I would start with what ARA is doing through workforce development to raise awareness of the industry, and I think that that's where it starts. You have a lot of I'll call it either tech or industrial type schools and programs that where maybe at UTI their students are focused on automotive. Is one of the key programs that they're offering, and it's the skills. A lot of the skills that they're learning are very applicable to the rental industry, but because maybe everything that they've heard, everything that they're expecting, and working on going through that program is related to automotive. That's what they're thinking about post degree, and so I think step one is raising awareness, and I think ARA is doing a great job to raise awareness of the industry, whether that be at the ARA show, bringing students in, even high school students in to see what the rental industry looks like and just to understand what it is, or working with schools like UTI or other tech schools, trade programs, to to create tracks. I know that that's one of the initiatives that's in process right now, is to create a program specific to getting into rental, a maintenance type track for equipment rental, and so I think that that's step one. The ARA job portal is another way that has allowed companies like RentalMax and other ARA members to connect with prospective and future team members, and so I think that has helped, where if we can get whether it's students or people that are already working in the trades, if we can get them interested in rental, that's a good place for them to go and find opportunities, no matter where it is that they're working. And then another area that I would highlight is the certification programs. I think it's very important that prospective rental industry team members understand the opportunities that are available and see an opportunity for growth. And I think that the certification programs really have gone a long way, helping with that, helping candidates see the growth opportunities, helping companies like RentalMax say to prospective team members, if you come here, we want to invest in you, and we have the resources to be able to do that. We are rental professionals, and I think that's an important designation, is that the people that work in this industry are professionals. It takes a lot of knowledge, skills, and experience, to be able to truly be an effective team member in the rental industry. And I think that the programs that ARA has put in place, MUP certification. There's a forklift certification program coming out. There's professional certifications available for everything from equipment rental to event rental, sales and marketing for equipment rental, and as well as service. And so I think those resources make it possible for companies like ours that may not be able to go out and create certification programs, ourselves. It make it possible for us to be able to leverage our membership and show candidates those opportunities, if they come work in the rental industry and work for a company like RentalMax.
Yeah, and I think Evan's linked those websites just for people listening. It's ararentalworks.com is one of the links, and the other one is ararental.org/learn/MEWP. Those are the two links you referenced, John. One thing we had talked about previously was how generations are sort of rolling out of the industry, and this question of who's going to replace the mechanics and the rental advisors who have this wealth of knowledge. Is that something you're concerned? Are you having a hard time finding people, or do you feel generally good about the team you have? That's not something you're really worried about long term.
So I think it is definitely a concern that that needs to be addressed. Or as we would say in EOS, it's an issue, right? Yeah. It's an opportunity to improve, and I think that evolution, if you will, of especially within mechanics, of the older generation, getting closer to retirement, and the number of people that are in kind of that age demographic are working in that position is much larger than the number of people in a younger kind of coming into the workforce age demographic, that are focused on working as a professional mechanic, and so it is a concern, and I think that what ARA is doing to raise awareness about the industry and career opportunities within the industry. I think the partnership with tech schools and other degree programs plays a key role in that. We have had success working with a local junior college that has a maintenance program. We've been able to bring some students in that are working part-time hours at RentalMax while they're also working on their degree. We've been able to give them a taste of the rental industry and how it's different than going into maybe automotive, and how the way the rental industry operates and what their day-to-day looks like is a lot more exciting than doing the same thing every day, working on the same engines every day. I mean, there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of variety in what our mechanics are doing compared to someone that's working in strictly automotive, or in manufacturing. So it is a concern. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat that, and it's one that we're working hard to address. At this point, what I would say is this is something we're going to have to work on for years. I mean, I'm thinking this is like, for the next 10 years, this has to be a focus for the industry to continue to highlight the opportunities, because I there will be a lot of opportunities for great positions, well-paid positions with growth opportunity, positions that that keep your day-to-day fresh and keep the mind working, and so I think we need to continue to highlight that, and I think within EOS, there's a saying that you have to hear something 7 times before you really hear it once, and I think we have to take the same approach, with what we're doing, recruiting and retaining the next generation of mechanics into the rental industry and at our RentalMax store locations.
Well, we've had 12 episodes and I've heard it on 12 episodes. So I'm starting to maybe it takes average person 7 times to hear it. It takes me 12 times. I've the future
You're
of the
better. You're
industry is
better than me.
I want to talk about your prediction for next year. It's less than 3 weeks to the end of the year, which is crazy. I read your article, so I won't spoil it, but tell me what you think about as you think about where the rental industry is headed into 2024.
So, I feel like the industry has changed a lot, uh, even in my short time in the industry. And, as we look toward 2024, I think what we're seeing, I think what everybody's seeing is the impacts of inflation, the impacts of um, higher interest rates, what that means to equipment investment in a very capital intensive industry. And and the impact that it's having, for us specifically on the construction industry, because about 80% of our business comes from contractors and industrial businesses. So if the economic factors are impacting job starts, if they're impacting, material prices, if they're impacting contractors, that kind of comes down and impacts us as one of their key suppliers. And so, I think that's balanced out by the fact that, there's uncertainty as to what is going to happen next year. And so I think that that's a great reason for our customer base to look at rental as opposed to purchasing, new equipment. And I think that rental penetration that we talk about, I think that's been talked about on some of your other conversations, with Rental Roundtable. I think this is a time where we have the opportunity to continue to grow that rental penetration, within the construction industry, and so I think all in, we're looking at moderate growth for 2024. We're definitely focused on the labor component and the people component of what it takes to continue to grow. I would say that our equipment investment is going to be tempered some because of the impact of interest rates and inflation. But we also want to give ourselves the flexibility to be responsive if our customers come to us with a need, because so much of what we're doing and the decisions that we're making are based on what we're hearing from customers. And, I think what we've seen this year is a decline in residential construction, which has more of an impact on a business like ours than others, because of the fleet mix that we have. But I think that that's expected to get to grow again in 2024, which should be a positive for our business and I think for the industry. And then I think we're still waiting to see the real impacts of government spending around the infrastructure bill, and so I think that will continue to create demand for the rental industry in 2024, and so I see it being a good year. I see it being a year where we're focused on really using the data analytics that we've invested in this year, especially to make smarter decisions as to what equipment we're bringing in, what equipment we're really focusing on, where we think we can really drive better utilization, and what our business development team is spending time on, because I still see a great opportunity for growth, and for the industry, and for RentalMax, I just don't think it's going to maybe come as easy as it did in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think the high interest rates are impacting every business. I mean, I've been in tech startups for 10 years. I've seen the boom and the bust, and in some sense, and profitable growth is for us as well. Like, it used to be money was cheap, so let's just go grow. Don't worry about ever turning profit. That's not the case anymore. We do have 2 questions I want to get to. I'll ask one first is, do you think we'll get back to double digit revenue growth percentages anytime soon? any specific trends or factors we should be aware of?
So double-digit revenue growth. I know that from an industry standpoint, from an ARA, Rentalytics standpoint, uh, the expectation is for more moderate growth, in the next few years. I think there are economic factors that will impact our ability to continue to grow. I think that rental penetration plays a key role in that growth. If we continue to increase rental penetration as part of the greater pie equipment usage, I think that plays a key factor. And then what happens with interest rates, what happens with privately funded construction projects. I don't think it's out of the question. I think that, and I'm speaking kind of broadly in industry terms. I think growth comes in different ways. I mean, what are we going to see with rental rates in the next few years? We've seen equipment prices come up significantly in the last 3 years. We've seen rental rates increase at a healthy clip. I think that's a big part of it. And and then for us, are we continuing to expand? There's organic growth, and then there's expansion type growth, and we've been able to benefit from both over the past couple of years, 2-3 years, and I would anticipate that we'll be looking at additional expansion in the coming years. So hopefully that answers the first question around double-digit growth, and then the second question was around any trends.
Any trends to be aware of, but I'll kind of dovetail into another question we have, which is related to interest rates. Like, if interest rates do stay high, can you recommend any strategies for companies to keep the growth steady and mitigate these financial pressures? So let's assume interest rates, I think in your article, the prime rate you said was about 8.5%. That's 5% higher than it was a year ago. So substantially higher. If you want to continue to grow and be aggressive, how do you grow in light of the higher interest rates? What any like specific tactical strategies you'd recommend?
I think you have to look at how you're financing new equipment purchases, or maybe instead of buying all new equipment, maybe you're looking at the used equipment market. Maybe you're looking at auctions. Depending on what your strategies are. And in terms of how you're financing any capital expenses, looking at different options. We do a combination of traditional financing and vendor financing. I think it's key at this point to explore what those options are. Maybe you can get better rates if you're going the vendor financing route. Maybe you can grow your fleet by looking at the used equipment market more than like in our case, we don't buy a lot of used equipment. We sell used equipment. We haven't sold as much in the last 3 years because it's been harder to get, harder to source, but that is changing as well. And so my expectation is that we're not going to see a big change in interest rates. Certainly not a significant decline in interest rates in 2024. And what I am curious about is whether that expectation that interest rates aren't going to come down significantly, if that becomes the new norm, where maybe in the last year that has stifled some growth and the start of some construction projects. Maybe if that's the new norm, maybe developers will look at it and say, rates are going to stay high. It's not, how long are we going to have to wait before rates come down? Maybe we should get off the sidelines and get back into the game. And I think we could see that in 2024. And I think because of the housing shortage, across the country, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see that in residential construction, new construction, primarily if we see that. And I am not an economist. This is not like a clear crystal ball, but those are some of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of opportunity for growth and what we can do to position ourselves and prepare ourselves to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, and one of the themes that you brought up multiple times talking about RentalMax is growth, even still in light of all of these changes. Your article, you mentioned double-digit growth in previous years, single-digit growth across the rental industry for this year. Who knows what will happen? But even with the high interest rates and all the other challenges facing the industry, labor shortages, et cetera, RentalMax is still planning to grow, and you're not sitting on the sidelines. You're still being aggressive appropriately, and it's not woe is me, sky is falling, let's all be fearful. Like, yeah, it's challenging. It's more challenging than it used to be. Money's not free, and it's more expensive to do certain projects, but there's still an opportunity to continue to increase rental penetration, expand, like you said, grow organically for you guys, but also maybe some expansion opportunities as well. My point is you're still being aggressive in terms of growing appropriately. You're not scared of where the next year looks like for the rental industry.
For sure. I'm a control what you can control type of person. And our team, very much thinks that way. Focus on what we can control. Make sure we understand what are the rules of the game, or what are the factors that are impacting the game that that we're playing. But let's focus on what we can control. And I think a big part for us, and we have been able to put systems in place to do this better in the last couple of years, but really understanding the data behind our business and what's performing well and what's not performing well, and what are the categories that we should be focusing on, or who are the customers that we really should be focusing on, and so that's time is one of our limited resources, and I think the way that we're spending our time is a big focus for me and for our leadership team going into 2024, and making sure that we give our team a clear direction. I think I'm really cautious about the whiplash effect of this is important today and something else is important tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make a decision, and we have to stick to that. We'll stay flexible enough to make adjustments if necessary, but I also don't want to just have a flavor of the day kind of focus.
Yeah, and I've sort of learned that when the president or the owner or the CEO says, "Hey, let's do this," like 30 things happen, and then you shift minds again, and 30 other things happen. That whiplash is not always clear to the leadership, but a lot of things can change based on certain directions. And on the market, on the economy side, for what it's worth, I do think in my mind this is sort of a new normal, but it's not a bad new normal. And I say that from the software and the technology perspective. Like, as I mentioned, money used to be cheap and free, that it was just kind of grow, and it didn't really ever matter if you were going to be profitable, because one day you could be. But there's still money being poured into software companies, but it's a very different view where almost every company needs to have a path to profitability within 12 months. Well, that did not exist 3 years ago. So what's changed is like it's more sustainable growth. But venture capital and software companies haven't gone to zero. They're still pouring money into it, but the expectations of grow are sort of gone. And it's more, how do we build a sustainable business, right? And I think that's sort of what you're saying for your space as well. We're still going to grow, but we're going to grow more efficiently than we used to. And it's more an eye toward efficient growth. Is sort of, the vibe I'm getting from you.
For sure. And, ideally we'd always operate that way. We'd always be able to operate most efficiently. And so that I do think this, especially this year, because we have seen some changes this year, I think it's made us better. It's, it hasn't been easy at all times, but it's made us better.
Yeah, it's sort of the belt tightening that's good for you, but got to go on a diet. It's not fun, but it's good.
Right.
Which
Right.
January's coming, dry January. Get in shape for January.
That's right.
We got another question from the audience, and I think you mentioned earlier you're involved, I think, on the technology board of the ARA, involved with the technology sector of the ARA. But the question is really the AI, which I think you also mentioned in your article. But with AI being a hot topic these days, are you experimenting at all with utilizing artificial intelligence in your day-to-day operations? Do you think it can really help save money?
So, I think this. I would look back at an article that was in Rental Management. I want to say back in October, around ways that rental companies can leverage AI. And so, there are some ways that I think we're experimenting with AI that have allowed us to or could allow us to save money, or to generate more revenue, to be to run a more profitable business. I think that we're looking at pricing strategies, and I think one of the key ways that AI can benefit the rental industry is to look at dynamic pricing. And so I think having the tools to be able to do that, are a key part of that equation. You have to have the right tools to be able to do that. But especially, I know we were talking a little bit about, the weather in Chicago, and how that changes over the course of the year. The reality is, for our business, that changes the demand for certain equipment categories at different times of the year. And so, I think we can get better at managing our fleet based on demand. It's kind of that price versus value proposition.
Right.
And I think dynamic pricing allows a business to maximize the return on an asset based on the demand at that given time. And so I would say there's probably a lot of room for improvement for us there, and we want to be careful. I mean, we don't want to price gouge anybody, but if there are no compressors available from September to November in the Chicagoland market, because everybody is doing sprinkler blowouts, which probably makes sense to some people listening, and it makes no sense to others because you don't have that seasonality. If all of ours are out, should we be charging the same rate for those for those 2 months that we are the rest of the year, where there's much more limited or maybe moderate demand for that equipment? And so I think that's one way. I think help. I'm big in finding ways to support our people within their roles. And so I would say that anything we can do from an AI standpoint to help our counter staff that's working with customers, or even to help customers, I think the whole idea of being effective in giving equipment demonstrations, or helping our customers find the right equipment for the job they're trying to get done. You have more experienced people that can answer that right off the top of their head. Maybe what can we do to make that easier for the less experienced people on our team, to be able to give the customer that consistent advice, or consistent service. So those are some ways that we're looking at it. I think that we've done a lot more, from a training standpoint, utilizing virtual training, and I think there's good and bad with that. But it allows you to reach more people, with fewer resources. So those are just a few ways that we've started to, I would say, experiment or implement, AI type solutions within our business operations.
Yeah, and on the dynamic pricing side in particular, when I started, with Quickly in 2020, dynamic pricing was one of the first things that I felt apparent with like sort of relatively fixed supply, fluctuating demand that should be implemented with airlines, hotels. And I worked at Uber, like that just seemed like a natural thing, not to just raise prices for everyone, but to actually increase utilizations. It's also about lowering prices in certain times and places. And I felt back then that there was still some hesitation. And also, even you could build some rules-based systems to do this, but the better way to do it would be to layer on some artificial intelligence, which was not really as applicable or ready in 2020 like it is now. Like you can sort of integrate a lot of off-the-shelf tools. So it's becoming, if you go back 3 years ago, I felt like it was too early. 3 years from now, I think it's going to be more adopted. Like where I'm going with this is assuming that the technology is now ready, that it can happen if the use case was applied appropriately. Do you see any risks or downsides to doing this, to offering dynamic pricing to all of your customers? Would you roll it out to a certain subset? Because it does seem like this is something that's going to happen for the independent companies in the next 3 years in my mind. But in terms of use case, taking the technology out of it, how do you see that playing out? Are there any concerns to rolling this sort of software or technology out?
I think we need to be conscious of, what message we're sending to some of our top customers that are consistent renters, and we definitely don't want um, to lose any customer business because of it. I think we would really take a hard look at um, how that, especially if it's higher pricing. I mean, lower pricing, I don't think anybody's going to complain about, but higher pricing, I would say we would need to take a hard look at that for some of our top customers, and it probably would not impact everybody. If we have customers that have established preferred pricing, I we need to honor that. It's kind of like if you have season tickets, maybe you're not as impacted by the dynamic pricing from game to game.
Yeah, there's certain customers with pre-negotiated rates, long-term relationships you're not going to mess with, but there's other groups that you would. So I've heard mixed bags on this, but it sounds like you are open to testing or using dynamic pricing in your business at some point in the future. Is that a fair statement?
For sure. And actually, looking at it from the standpoint of, what equipment could we utilize more during the off-peak demand times by lowering the prices. I mean, I see a great opportunity there. I mean, when you look at equipment that is sitting in some cases for us for half the year, is there any opportunity for us to utilize that equipment on the in those fringe times where where we can help customers and generate more revenue, even if it's not at the same book rate, so to speak. So yes, to answer your question, that is definitely an area that I see opportunity in and would be interested in.
Have you gotten any experiments or anything rolled out yet that you've been able to learn about this, or is it still sort of something that you're sort of kicking the tires on?
I would say we experimented this fall with some select equipment categories that we have promoted, equipment discounts, where in the past that's not really something we have done. So, kind of to my last point, looking at equipment, maybe this is a fringe season for some equipment categories, or if we have excess inventory in certain equipment categories. We have just started with that, and that's been really kind of a fourth quarter push for us. And so, we'll look at the data at the end of the quarter and then see what that looks like as we head into, especially prepping for like March and April are also fringe months for certain equipment categories.
Yeah, well, when I see you at the in New Orleans in February, I'll need to find out what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I have a good story to tell.
Well, either way, it's a learning.
That's right.
I've always been interested in dynamic pricing. I do think it's starting to become something people are more comfortable with. I think that the technology is starting to get there too. In the last 5 minutes, the last topic I have was just around successfully integrating some of the acquisitions you've had. As you mentioned, you started with 8 locations, now at 10. You've added 2 in the last year or so. what have you learned in that process of making post acquisition that transition successful for RentalMax?
I think it starts, with being all about fit. And we have looked at a number of opportunities, maybe a dozen or more, that are geographically a fit for us. I mean, that's probably where it starts, understanding how it fits within our network of stores. And then, it's looking at a fleet mix, how does the fleet match up with what we're renting? Is it the same? Are there differences? Usually there are some differences, understanding why there are differences. And then people, I think, we look, in all cases, we look at the people. I want to know, if we're acquiring a business, is the owner continuing to work in that business, or is the owner working in that business currently? Is taking, if the owner is not going to stay with the company, and um, they're not involved, but they are kind of at the center of all operations now, that's a big change, and that's a big change for the way that store operates. That's a big change, for the customer relationships. And so I think in the two acquisitions that we have executed and integrated, uh, both have been great fits. In both cases, we had really strong teams. In both cases, I have, I, myself and a couple others within our leadership team developed great rapport with the owners. Felt like we had a really clear picture of what the opportunities were to come in and take our model and grow the business. And so, almost, you know, completely, I feel like we were able to come in and hit the ground running, with our integration. Our approach was to not come in and change everything right away. Our approach was to have a plan in place so that, we communicated with the team that was there, because we wanted them to be a part of the RentalMax family, the future of, that business and store operation. We communicated that there would be change, but we wanted to make sure that it didn't all come at once, and that we kind of walked side by side with them through the change so that they were comfortable with it, and really highlighted, the growth opportunities, and what being part of the RentalMax team was going to allow them to do that maybe they weren't going to have that opportunity, where they were. And so I think there's always some luck involved, and, good fortune. But we really took that approach and focused on the people, making sure that the foundation was strong, making sure that we were, continuing to serve customers, in a personal way and at a high level. And, I think this was our first full year in both both stores that we acquired. And I would say it was certainly a success.
That's great. It's not always the case with acquisitions. It's not 100% in many cases. Well, John, it's been awesome. We're just out of time here. Final question. I talked to a lot of people who are entering the equipment rental industry. They're buying a business or maybe even starting one. You've had a great successful career in just the 6 years you've been here. What advice would you have to people who want to learn about the equipment rental industry, in terms of getting up to speed? Any advice for people entering the space?
So, number one, I think you definitely want to join ARA. I think that the membership within ARA, attending the ARA show, looking into the programs and the benefits that are available to you. I think that that is as good of a foundation as you can possibly build. I also would highly recommend peer executive groups for anyone that is up and running and looking to grow their business. I think that those two organizations have really helped me, and so I would highly recommend getting involved that way, getting involved in your local ARA chapters, state chapters. We have a Chicagoland chapter here that we're involved in, and meeting people and just listen to. The other thing I'll say is you're just listening to your customers. And in my case, when I came to RentalMax, the business was already well established, and my customers were as much internal. Our store managers, our general manager, our leadership team, as they were external. But know who your customers are, listen to them, and if you can help your customers accomplish their goals, I think no matter what you're trying to do, you're going to find success, and it might not come right away, but it will come. And so I don't know. That's, I guess, in a couple minutes, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. Well, you missed one important one, which is listen to the Roundtable, but that's
Oh, that's true. That's true. I'm sorry.
yeah. And I think your dynamic price, one of Mike messaged in, Kyle, build in dynamic pricing and you'll see lots of people upgrading and quickly. So I think there's people, the dynamic price thing, I've been interested for a while. So we'll see. Maybe something we kick around with as well. So, but I want to hear how it goes with you first before we build anything.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I'll look forward to talking to you in February at the ARA show in New Orleans.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon. John, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I really appreciate you having me. And Rental Roundtable is awesome.
Sounds good. All right. See you, John.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.